Good afternoon and welcome to this month's Local Heritage Talk. My name is Darylyn and I'm the Local Heritage Librarian at Shoalhaven Libraries. This month I thought we'd take a look at wine, moonshine and a little of the history of some of the hotels in the Shoalhaven region. I hope you enjoy. In 1869, Marcus Clarke said of Australians, "They are not a nation of snobs like the English, or of extravagant boasters like the Americans, or of reckless profligates like the French. They are simply a nation of drunkards." At the time, Clarke's observation was understandable. During Australia's penal era, rum had been used as a currency, and it is believed that the colony's inhabitants drank more alcohol per capita than in any other time in human history. This month's talk takes us from one end of the spectrum to the other, from wine to moonshine. We will also look at the history of Shoalhaven's hotels and their publicans. It is believed that the first grapes on the south coast of New South Wales were grown on the foothills of Coolangatta Mountain by Alexander Berry in the mid-1800s. However, Berry was not the only estate owner to invest in the good drop. An article published in the South Coast Register on December 13, 2014 reports that the de Mestre family conducted the Torreira estate east of Nowra from the 1840s, and while Etienne became a notable horse race trainer, his brother André established a successful vineyard. The vineyard golf links in this vicinity have taken the name, in the area that in de Mestre's day was known either as Barung or Warra Warra. Despite floods and droughts in this era, by the early 1860s he was enjoying success with his crop. Specific details were revealed in February 1886, when the Shoalhaven Telegraph reported on a section of vineyard that had been down for 6 years. There are about 3 acres under Isabella and Shiraz grape, there being about 2,000 vines. There cannot be less than 5 or 6 tons of grapes on the 3 acres, as each vine, we feel sure, averages over 5 pounds. By 1891, Herman Conradi had the vineyard, and he continued the tradition, advertising, "Grapes now ripe, splendid samples for sale. Visitors supplied with good food on the table for 1 shilling, the same as in de Mestre's time." When he put the 235-acre property on the market the following year, there were 10 acres of vineyard with 6 in full production and an orchard of 300 trees. Fred Morrison was the new owner of the Warra Warra vineyard, and he completed with honours a winemaking course at Sydney Technical College. With the assistance of a Sydney nurseryman, he remodelled the vineyard and improved his methods. At harvest time, the grounds were opened free of charge, and visitors were able to purchase grapes in any quantity. By the turn of the century, Morrison had stepped up the marketing of his product, and the Telegraph editor enjoyed a hamper of his #1 wine for Christmas 1900. A subsequent report described the property as like an oasis in the desert, with the vineyard occupying 4 acres and the 800-tree orchard of many fruit types. The Isabella grape was still favoured, and the 700 gallons of wine produced during the year were valued at £350. Described as having a rich flavour and bouquet, the wine was absolutely pure, but because of the demand, Morrison was not able to keep stock for as long as he wished. In May 1903 he opened a wine depot and refreshment rooms in Junction Street, Nowra. It was noted in the Telegraph that his celebrated Warra Warra wine, pure juice of the grape, could be purchased for 3d. a glass, or by the bottle for 1 3 and 2 6. Later in the decade, the property was taken over by Edward Begbie, who dispensed with the grapes and grew potatoes in addition with his variety of fruits. How ironic that, after a lapse of 100 years, the Shoalhaven now hosts a number of vineyards and wineries, and possibly the first vineyard now re-established at Coolangatta Estate. Rotgut, White Lightning, Bathtub Gin, Pop Skull, Panther's Breath, Corn Liqueur, or just plain Shine. It has many names, but a couple of things are always true about moonshine. It's made in secret and it's illegal. Moonshine is any kind of alcohol, though usually whiskey or rum, that is made in secret to avoid taxes or outright bans on alcoholic drinks. The term moonshine comes from Britain, where it originally was a verb, moonshining, that referred to any job or activity that was done late at night. Because the operators of illegal whisky stills had to conduct their business out of sight of legal authorities, these backward bruise masters became known as moonshiners, and the term became exclusively theirs. And the place to go to find moonshine in the Shoalhaven? Just as we did last month, it's time to head for the hills. This time, the mountain ridge between Berry and the Southern Highlands around Robertson. For some time past, the customs authorities have had a suspicion that an illicit still has been erected in the vicinity of the Kangaroo Valley. On Thursday, one of the officers visited the district, and from the inquiries he made, he decided to make an arrest. The man was taken to Nowra Police Court and remanded until Friday. The officer again visited the district on Saturday, and yesterday found a complete still in a gully between Berry and Kangaroo Valley. The still, which was of an elaborate character, appeared to have been in use for some time. A number of casks were also found in the vicinity. This brief report, taken from the Sydney Morning Herald, is dated Monday, March the 16th, 1903. It was not the first time a reference was made in the media of the day to moonshine in the valley. This illustration accompanies an article published in the Australian Town and Country Journal on Saturday, November the 11th, 1882, titled Southern Pencillings. The article reads, The Berry Estate. I have stated that Broughton Village is almost entirely shut in by ranges. These, the principal of which are known as the Kangaroo Valley and Campbell ranges, being in reality a continuation of the Saddleback or Coast Range, are now thickly settled by the free selector, under whose axe they are fast changing their appearance. Space will not allow my recounting an excursion made up in these ranges in company with Mr. James Wilson of Broughton Village, who owns 1,000 or 2,000 acres of the most elevated land there. Neither can I, for the same reason, enlarge upon the coal seams, the magnificent McFarlane waterfall, several hundred feet in height, the wonderful springs of crystal water with their beds of watercress, which I saw, nor of the difficulty we experienced here in finding our way through the scrub to a relic of bygone days, namely, the remains of an illicit still, by which means probably some person or persons paved their way to honour and a name. There had already been settlers in the district for 60 years. Given the isolation of the area, it is probably no surprise that some more enterprising individuals took the production of liquid comfort into their own hands. Still, as the country opened up, I suspect the inaccessibility of the area became a positive rather than a negative. 4 reports appeared in various newspapers toward the end of August 1892, mentioning Brogues Creek as a hot spot for distillation. Whilst only one still was discovered, the police felt that other stills exist in the locality, and, oh dear, the man found guilty of being in possession of an illicit still and fined £100? Let's just say it is a family name I am familiar with. That was just the tip of the iceberg, though. 21 reports appeared in the newspapers between December 27th, 1895 and January 11th, 1896, most in local or Sydney editions, but some as far afield as Port Macquarie, Lismore and Albury. Events appeared to quieten down after this for 7 or so years, and then, during 1903, production again escalated. March was the important month this time, and a 2-page report may be read in the Shoalhaven News and South Coast District's Advertiser describing the illicit still case, Guatemala whiskey. It reads the transcript of the court proceedings, and some familiar names are included, such as Mr. Marriott, one of 2 legal representatives for the accused, and a witness by the name of Henry Russell, a commercial real estate agent residing at Kangaroo Valley. That familiar family name I mentioned earlier? Leasee of a neighbouring property. The accused was found guilty, and counsel for the prosecution, Mr. Darcy Irvine, then asked that a substantial penalty be imposed in order to act as a deterrent, as he was informed the illicit distillation was not uncommon in this district, and the revenue was, in consequence, being greatly defrauded with regard to excise duty as well as licences. Perhaps the deterrent worked. It is 20 years before bootleggers are mentioned again. Illicit stills on South Coast. Discovery at Waverley, Sydney, of one of the most elaborate illicit stills ever found in New South Wales, is proof that the days of moonshine whisky making are far from dead. Although not as openly conducted as 30 years ago, distillation of Mountain Dew is carried out extensively in various parts of New South Wales, particularly on the south coast. Along the mountainside near Burrawang, and along the tortuous trail of the Kangaroo River near Brogers Creek and Budjong, whisky, rum, and what is called honey beer are brewed illicitly as often as is necessary to satisfy the requirements of local residents, who balk at the 15 to 20 miles trip from their homes to the authorised rendezvous for a nip. A few months ago, a rabbiter was located a spot where one of these mountain stills had been working, and found a 5-gallon keg of white whisky on a ledge of rock where it had been placed to mature. Needless to say, there were no bunnies trapped around there until the rabbiter had felt the last drop of Mountain Dew trickle down his swallow. Hotels in the Shoalhaven were numerous, as most villages, though not all, had at least one establishment. What follows is a sample, and most of them are still trading today. The Kangaroo Inn was one of the first 2 buildings when Broughton Creek Township was being developed in 1865 by David Berry. A man by the name of John Howard would be the first licensee. 7 licensees later, the hotel was being managed by Jonathan Goldsmith Lambert. It was he who decided to change the name of the hotel to that of the Commercial Hotel. It must have been a wise decision, as Mr. Lambert was publican there for over 11 years. A number of interesting stories may be told of the hotel, including the following. Robbery at the Berry Commercial Hotel. A rather daring robbery was perpetrated at the Commercial Hotel Berry on Wednesday night. At about 10:20, somebody, after 2 attempts, lifted up the window of one of the bedrooms at the back of the hotel, occupied by Mrs. Robinson of Kangaroo Valley and her daughter. He thrust in his head and seized a handbag belonging to Mrs. Robinson, containing a silver watch, gold chain, a pair of elastic-sided boots, and Mrs. Robinson's marriage certificate. When she saw the intruder, Mrs. Robinson exclaimed, "How dare you open the window and come in like that?" He replied, "Shut your mouth." He speedily got over the fence and decamped. Another 7 licensees later, following major renovations, another change of name occurred. On Tuesday, November the 12th, 1935, the Commercial Hotel became the Hotel Berry, the name under which it is still trading today. Another commercial hotel was also operating in the district on the other side of the mountains to Berry. This was Kangaroo Valley's second hotel, located across the road from the first, rather convenient for a rather brief pub crawl. The hotel opened during 1892 and was designed by well-known architect Cyril Blackett. It comes as no surprise that work as a publican may be dangerous. However, did you know that one of the hazards might be opening a bottle of lemonade? While fulfilling her duties, Mrs. Diggins suffered a painful injury while opening a bottle of lemonade, which burst and severely cut 3 fingers on her left hand, causing her to faint. She was not the only Shoalhaven publican to have that experience. It was during 1948 that the licensing court granted permission to change the hotel's name to the Friendly Inn. Again, the name the hotel is still trading under today. One hotel that is no longer trading is the Prince of Wales. It is perhaps a shame that there are no longer any of the old hotels in the main street of Nowra, especially a hotel as grand as the Prince of Wales. Built during 1883, a representative of the Shoalhaven Telegraph described the hotel as a colossal structure presenting quite an imposing figure. Given the following description, I think it might just have been. On a rubble stone foundation and roofed with corrugated iron, the stud and weatherboard building has its main frontage of 76 feet, 23 metres, to Junction Street, with the bar being in the angle between 2 thoroughfares. Highlight of the main hall was a beautifully panelled Gothic door, flanked by stained glass lights. Into this beautifully crafted building, then, arrived a most unusual guest. Many of us have heard the phrase, bull in a china shop. This is a story with a novel twist from the Braidwood Dispatch and Mining Journal, January the 10th, 1930. Shortly after breakfast on New Year's Day, guests at the Prince of Wales Hotel Nowra received quite a shock when a man, leading a bull, calmly passed through the luxuriously appointed lounge into the hotel yard. Some of the ladies present screamed, while other guests rubbed their eyes and wondered if they were dreaming. The majority, however, made a hasty retreat. While the man went to look for the bar, he tethered the bull to a post, but during his absence, hotel attendants ejected the beast from the premises. I remember, not the building, but, I guess, the smell of the beer drunk in the building, scented as I passed by with my parents or grandparents. I also remember turning away hotel patrons as they began their pub crawl, wandering into the newly opened Best and Less on a Thursday evening from the last remaining Junction Street hotel opposite. Another magnificent structure, the building we know today as the Husky Pub, was constructed during 1929. Alan Clark's book, Early Years of Nowra District Pubs, contains a detailed description written up in the Nowra Leader of the Jervis Bay Hotel upon its completion. Prior to 1929, another hotel stood upon the site and had done so since 1895, when George Dent became owner and licensee. Tourists at Huskisson are nothing new, and George Dent wished to take advantage of the day trippers by offering a chance to stay overnight. It appears to have been a viable venture, with reports of 400 visitors to Jervis Bay on New Year's Day 1898, and 102 guests at the hotel itself at one point during 1921. When further guests arrived that day, nearby cottages were rented to cater for the numbers. It would appear that the popularity of Jervis Bay and its white sands has never diminished. A hotel at Tomarong may have the honour of being the first in our district. Named the Traveller's Rest, it was located on the northeastern corner of the Nowra to Ulladulla Road and the South Huskisson Road, now known as Hawken Road and Pine Forest Road. The hotel was opened by John Parnell on the 1st of April 1857. The positioning on the road between Nowra and Ulladulla, and at the only junction to access Jervis Bay, meant Tomarong became a focal point for travellers heading north and south. The Traveller's Rest provided just that, a stopping point at which to stretch one's legs and take some refreshment. Granted a liquor licence in 1858, John Parnell was also granted a licence to sell liquor at the launch of vessels at Currumbin Creek until the Jervis Bay Hotel was opened. Thomas Mooney became the licensee in 1890 after John Parnell retired at the age of 87 years. But the building itself was starting to fall into disrepair, and despite the assurances from the owner and the current licensee to rebuild the hotel, after an inspection by the licensing board and a scathing report on the hotel's condition, the decision of the board was to not renew the lease. After 33 years of operation, the hotel was closed. The hotel was eventually rebuilt and reopened in 1898 as the Commercial Hotel. Despite staunch opposition from locals and other hotel owners at Wondandian, there was a majority of the licensing board bench in favour of the application, which was accordingly granted. The hotel operated until its final closure in June 1911. The original single-level timber slab Star Hotel was built in 1860 by Edward Tiedemann. An idea of the fragility of the building may be gained by the following report, published in the Ulladulla and Milton Times on Saturday, October the 7th, 1893. Narrow escape of the Star Hotel. Late on Monday night, the back portion of the main premises of the Star Hotel was discovered to be on fire. Fortunately, the fire had not obtained a good hold, and the promptitude displayed by several persons who, providentially, happened to be on the spot, prevented what would otherwise have been a terrible conflagration, resulting in considerable loss of property. The hotel is an old building of wood. The inside walls are lined with canvas and papered, and it can be imagined how it would burn if it got a fair start. The fire, when discovered, must have only started, but the flames spread from the floor to the ceiling, burning the window curtain, damaging a couch and picture, cracking the glass in the window, and burning a portion of the flooring. The damage done was not heavy, but it was a remarkably narrow escape from entire demolition of the building and adjoining block of wooden structures. The circumstances of the fire were of such a character as to induce the coroner, Dr. Ryan, to hold an inquiry. Details of this inquiry are reported in the continuation of the article, a piece that takes up 2/3 of the front page. A second-story addition with a decorative timber veranda, an impressive parapet was added by Tom Cork, apparently a renowned teetotaler, and his wife Louise during their ownership between 1906 and 1924. Starting in 1924, the facade of the Star Hotel had been very much altered, with an extension at its southern end, windows bricked in, the removal of the balcony and veranda, and addition of a cantilevered awning. And only in the past year or so has the Star Hotel undergone once more a major renovation, ensuring its service for another generation. The Marlin Hotel at Ulladulla is a relative latecomer, but this is not to say that Ulladulla had no public houses prior to this. Cathy Dunn's book, Marlin Tales, A History of Hotels in Ulladulla, makes mention of the George Inn, Royal Hotel, and Harbourview Hotel. Still, there was a dry period through the 1920s, 30s and 40s. Then a gentleman by the name of Les Pittman made a bold move, building, owning and managing the Marlin Hotel from 1948. Yet another magnificent structure, the building showed many features of the post-war period. It has been suggested that its stained glass windows were shipped from America. Quite an achievement with World War II just over and building materials in short supply. The Marlin Hotel was considered luxurious premises, furnished on a most sumptuous scale and representing the last word for holiday makers. There was hot and cold water in all bedrooms, 2 dining rooms, and provision for up to 125 guests. For just over 25 years, from 1950, the hotel was owned by Ansett and its subsidiary company, Pioneer Tours and Pioneer Hotels. Tourism was big business, and the Marlin Hotel provided the best. The dining room was silver service, catering for travellers making their way between Melbourne and Sydney. The same standards were observed as for Anset's first-class hotels in the capital cities. It sounds like a far cry from the Marlin Hotel of the 1970s and 80s, when the Marlin Hotel was a top spot for popular music acts and developed a rather rougher reputation. Regardless, the Marlin Hotel, as with so many others, remains true to the role of a public house, a place where the community gathers, stories are told, reputations made and broken. Join us again next month when we will be visiting a handful of the historic houses situated in the Shoalhaven.